What a great opportunity God gives us by allowing us to dwell in a house where we can't pay the rent. And I think, most of us, just appreciate this grace of God and what it means to us. It's a place where we live and we're free from condemnation. The actual cleansing that takes place in this grace house is just continual and phenomenal. And yet there is a reality that we can fall short of God's grace. That's expressed here in the Hebrews chapter 12. We've studied this passage, but notice how that it says that we need to be careful, that we need to pursue sanctification with all individuals because we can come short of the grace of God and that there can be this root of bitterness that takes over within us. One root of bitterness that easily defiles and jeopardizes our ability to live in God's grace house is our failure to practice biblical forgiveness. We've looked at Jesus' plain statement that if we don't forgive, neither will our Father forgive us. So this is an important issue when it comes to our abiding in God's grace house. We've opened up Scripture over the past few weeks and we've looked for a biblical definition of what it means to forgive. And we have found that the various Hebrew and Greek words imply for us that forgiveness is a sending away of a trespass that's been done against you. It is also the dismissing of guilt. Folks, this is important for us to realize. We don't forgive people that aren't guilty. We forgive people who are guilty. And if we're going to just offer our forgiveness for people who aren't guilty anymore, how is that forgiveness? So it is a sending away of guilt. It is a releasing of what you believe that you are owed. I deserve better than that. Yeah, we all have, and we all do. But we send that away. We dismiss that. We also found that it's letting go of judging another's motivation, which again, all of that ties into a spirit of unforgiveness. It is a pouring out or a sending away of resentments from hurtful events. It is also extending unconditional favor, which releases debt, offers comfort, and proves our tenderness. So that's what biblical forgiveness is all about. We have looked at some reasons why we should forgive. Number one among those is because we want to obey Jesus. And if we're going to obey Jesus, then we need to forgive. It also provides the framework to address wrongdoing. If you take forgiveness out of the scenario when it comes to addressing evil, all that's left is judgment. All that's left is pointing fingers and accusing. But when you factor in forgiveness, it provides a framework by which we can address wrongdoing. It also is the means of extending comfort to someone who is in dire need of that comfort, the offender. And it also is a means of experiencing a personal liberation from all of these confining prisons that a lack of forgiveness binds us into. So, knowing what forgiveness is and understanding the reasons to engage in it, we're now prepared to continue our study by asking this: how do we accomplish this task of forgiveness? How do we get it done? If we know what it is, if we can't understand why we need to do it, how do we get it done? And I think everybody in here is going to say, amen, I need to know how to accomplish it, because this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where this gets difficult. The head knowledge of forgiveness is fairly easy for us. The practicum of getting it accomplished is more difficult. And so we're going to spend not just a couple, 3 weeks on getting this understood. How do we accomplish forgiveness? Before we begin to discuss how, we need to do so understanding a truth. And that is that forgiveness is not an immediate solution. In other words, once we hear about how to accomplish forgiveness, it doesn't mean, boom, I'm going to be able to forgive. It is not an immediate solution. Usually, that which demands forgiveness was not an immediate situation. The process of forgiveness is exactly that, a process. It is not some attitudinal change that's going to bring an instant release. In other words, okay, I understand forgiveness now. Oh, I feel no more resentment. No. It is not a quick fix. That's first thing to keep in mind as we discuss how to forgive. Not going to be a pill that you swallow and say, okay, I now forgive. Forgiveness happens, this is the second principle. Forgiveness happens at different degrees and levels depending upon the offense, the offender, and the offended. In other words, each instance in which I'm called to forgive is going to have some perimeters depending upon what it is that's happened, the degree in which it's happened, to whom it has happened, and all of those things are going to be variables in this whole process of forgiveness. So when we discuss how to forgive, there isn't one answer that's always going to fit the exact same in every situation. I think that's why we struggle with forgiveness as individuals. There are times when forgiveness comes relatively easy for us. And we're able to release those things and to be free from those. And then we have this, on the other hand, this thing we try to get free from, and it's not happening. And so we wonder, what's wrong with me because I'm not able to achieve that? Well, one of the things to keep in mind is every situation is different. So forgiveness isn't quick, and forgiveness has many variables attached to it. It means when we engage in forgiveness, we have many variables that may factor into that process. About a year ago, in a Wednesday night class, I gave a survey on forgiveness, asked some questions about forgiveness. I want to share some of those results because it illustrates exactly what I'm talking about, that forgiveness is so varied, depending upon the particular situation that is calling me to forgiveness. For example, one of the questions on the survey said something relative to, what is your greatest challenge in practicing biblical forgiveness? What presents to you the greatest challenge in giving forgiveness? Number one, and these are just not in order of any significance, just random. Forgiving repeat offenses. Anybody have a problem with that one? I suspect, when Jesus said 7 times 70, he knew that was one of our hang-ups, don't you? Repeat offenses presents a challenge to us in the area of forgiveness. Getting correct information. Now, we're going to talk some more about this a little little later on, about what that may say about us in this whole thing of forgiveness. But so many times when it comes to forgiveness, we get we hear different bits of information. And feeling like we have the proper information sometimes presents a challenge to us in this area of forgiveness. Those refusing to be accountable for their actions. Is that a challenge for us? Now, I have to say that I gave the survey before we studied anything. Now, after studying biblical forgiveness, that one really shouldn't be much of a challenge for us, but it is. In other words, we often associate people making corrections with forgiveness, but biblical forgiveness doesn't tie those two things together. Next, overcoming the pain. Challenge? Getting through the pain. Pride. Who do they think they are to hurt me that way? That's another way that pride shows itself. Overcoming fear of being hurt again. Kind of ties in with repeat offenses. Being vulnerable. Putting myself out there. Taking risk again. Failure to forgive myself. How about when the other party has no desire for reconciliation? And having no control over any of it. No control over any of this. Another question that I asked was, what types of offenses present you with greater difficulty? When offense is against a loved one. Especially, the mothers have this mothering concept. You mess with one of the cubs and you better watch out. A lot of times we carry that into this area of forgiveness. You know, we find it easier to forgive when people do something against us than when people harm our spouse